The Bankrupt Bookseller. Madness in Books. It is an unending amazement to me the subjects to which men and women turn their minds. It is an unending privilege to the bookseller that he may know what men and women are seeking to know. I have my professor, for example, who is interested in madness, not the madness of the psychologist, but madness as an exemplified in people. It is not his professional subject. He himself is an economist, but it is his hobby. Nietzsche's life story took him first in this direction as it happened, and also because a boyhood's friend about the same time developed GPI, and after a brilliant career is now shut away from the world in a strange world of his own. He lives in one of the paying parts of the very beautiful asylum nearby, and I am told is very happy. At first he kicked against the pricks of confinement, but time and treatment have now won him to a peaceful acquiescence. He walks about the grounds entirely content that with his idea that he is a monarch of all he surveys. A great build, the great buildings are his. The doctors are his doctors, engaged by him. The beautiful gardens are laid out under his direction. The other inmates are poor, mentally diseased folk who, but for his generosity, would have neither home nor care. He is completely happy in the possession of the idea of himself and his surroundings, and the hope of my professional friend is that he will die undisillusioned. I almost envy him his paradise, although it challenges my Lord Chesterfield's dictum when he wrote, "A fool never has thought, a madman has lost it." Dryden sensed the nearer truth when he wrote, "There is a pleasure sure in being mad, which none but madmen know." There are no books on this subject that I can discover, and my friend is writing one, or rather compiling materials for one. Nietzsche is a notable example, but there must be many others in the pages of biography. Chatterton, the marvelous boy, would be found to be mad by a modern jury, and there was Nathaniel Lee, who was called the mad poet, being confined for 4 years in Bedlam. Cooper, in his later days, and Gentle Mary Lamb are among the company, as to Shirley also was William Blake. John Clare's story, as told in Encyclopedia of English Literature, Chambers, 2 volumes, is a story to which the heart of the poor, embarrassed bookseller warms. Born of a working-class parents, his father a cripple and a pauper, John Clare began life as a plowboy. 8 weeks' work gave him 8 pence for a month's schooling, and at 13 he had scraped and saved sufficient to buy a copy of Thomson's Seasons for a shilling. His shilling intact, he rose at daybreak and walked 6 or 7 miles to the nearest bookseller's shop. He arrived too early, and think of it, book buyers and members of the book and other learned societies, he had to wait until the shop was open. On his return, he wrote his first poem, The Morning Walk. At 24, he planned to publish a book and sent out a prospectus at the cost of a laboriously saved pound. His book was not to cost more than 3 shillings 6 pence, and although only 7 subscribers were secured, this venture led to the collection being published by a London bookseller under the title of Poems Descriptive of Rural Life and Scenery by John Clare, a Northamptonshire peasant. The book was a success, and notable patrons for a while made his life a happy one, but like his Scottish prototype Robert Burns, ill luck with his farm was his lot, and he became the prey of melancholy. He was removed to an asylum near London, from which after 4 sad years he escaped. Liberty, however, was denied him, and he entered Northampton Asylum, where 20 tragic years later he died. His poem, What is Life, is steeped in melancholy. And what is life? An hourglass on the run, a mist retreating from the morning sun, a busy, bustling, still repeated dream. Its length, a minute's pause, a moment's thought, and happiness, a bubble on the stream. That is the act of seizing shrinks to naught. Turning the pages of the invaluable cyclopedia, I come to the names of Letitia Elizabeth Landon, who wrote under the initials LEL. Hers is no less tragic story. Born in Chelsea, then more aristocratic than bohemian, she had the felicity of maintaining herself by her pen. At 36, she married the governor of Cape Coast Castle and went with him to Africa. There she continued to write, but who can tell what explained her end? 3 months after her arrival in Africa, she was found dead with a bottle of prussic acid by her side. Her last poem, the last verse of her last poem, is supremely simple and touching. She writes, "O fancy, vain as it is fond, and little needed too, my friends, I need not look beyond my heart to seek for you." Robert Tennyhall, second only to Burns himself and the author of many lovely lyrics, was another ill-starred soul. Following on the rejection of his poems, he fell into a state of morbid despondency. He burned his manuscripts and drowned himself. De Quincey's name occurs in the same sad category, although his miserable existence dragged itself to 70 years. Edgar Allan Poe, too, proved how high it is a price the individual pays for what is joy to posterity. These names are mostly collected from the chambers, and I have passed them on to my friend. What good can come of his somber study if it ever reaches print, I cannot imagine, unless it is a satisfaction to some of us similarly affected by the melancholy which has marked us for our own to know of some other wayfarers in the same pilgrimage. The study of the lives of the writers is for me immensely interesting. Who among my customers knows about Barry Cornwell's luck? His real name was Byron Waller Proctor, and he was at Harrow with Peele and Byron. His verse is as readable as any other poet's of the second class, but that is not what I call his luck. Mr. John Kenyon was a wealthy gentleman who was fond of literary society. He had himself written, but that is not his claim to my regard. When he died, he left over £140,000 in legacies, part of the disposition of which was as follows: Elizabeth Barrett Browning, £4,000; Robert Browning, £6,500; Barry Cornwell, £6,500. What a subject for a short play! The evening in Italy when the news came to the Brownings, or the morning in the Temple when they heard of Barry Cornwell's luck. There is the story of Mrs. Elizabeth Inchbald, more remarkable than her tales or plays. Born a Catholic, she ran away from home with a bandbox for her luggage at the age of sweet 16. In extremis, after many misadventures, she asked an actor friend, Mr. Inchbald, what would she do? Why not marry? But who would marry me? I would, as the dialogue between them and their marriage was the upshot. She wrote plays, she acted, and by prudence made and saved money. Her biographer in Chambers tells how she scoured her bedroom while a coach with a coronet and a pair of horses awaited her pleasure to take her an airing. She kept her sister at great personal sacrifice, and on her death resided in a boarding house in Kensington. Unlike this modern generation, she declined to write her memoirs, although offered £1,000 for them, and when she died she bequeathed £6,000 to her relatives. She did not forget humble folk either. Her laundress and her hairdresser had £20 each. What a woman! She needed no vote and did without a husband for years. Some modern woman ought to write her life. I would sell 3 copies, I am sure, but in any case I would order 3 even if I didn't sell them, out of the respect to her memory. This exercise has not been what it is set out to be. I have to find books which deal with madness, and I won't make a sale out of what I have written. Still, it has been an interesting survey, and I have been happier tonight with the denizens of Bedlam than in the best society this place can offer. Many a man is mad in certain instances and goes through life without having perceived. For example, a madness has seized the person of supposing himself obliged literally to pray continually, and the madness turned the opposite way, and the person not thought in the crime over to pray, it might not probably have continued unobserved. I quote from Dr. Johnson, and I am grateful for the spread of his covering wings. I am not observed. Let that suffice. Two other short sections. Payable at death. The word is the most absolute one in the English language. It is monosyllabic in most languages. I am told definite, exclusive, complete, curt. It is a subject upon which every writer has had something to say. In the Standard Dictionary of Quotations, there are over 200 familiar allusions to death, and yet it was none of these, nor even the extent itself, that brought my pencil to paper. A friend and a customer has sought long and oft to induce me to insure my life, and I am still dwelling on how many annual premiums I must pay to secure £250 at 60 or previous death. To my creditors anyway, for me to die would be a great gain, and why not? The merits of dying have been steadily canvassed in this generation, having been born under pressure of the beautiful and multiply profits. We are implored to die for our country by the white feather Piccadilly patriots. It is all very confusing for one who is seeking a living in an apparently death-desiring world. Invoices, statements, and what follows. Firstly, they came named 1 English hymnal, 1 Conrad's Youth. That is an invoice. Then later they came anonymously to books, £1.16. That is a statement. The next stages are terrible. These slips of paper stuck on the statements. This account is overdue. Your remittance by return will oblige. There are worse to follow. How I wish they would begin all over again. 1 English hymnal, 1 Conrad's Youth. If I could only get back to the invoice. If I could only see the books as an invocation again. How happy I would be.